Chapter 18. Dinner Date. Maybe the best moment of the whole day was when Bat finally felt Thor rustling in the pouch that hung from around Bat's neck. Thor woke from his nap just when Lawrence was finishing the last bath, which was for an inky spaniel named Webster. "Lawrence," Bat said, "Thor is waking up." Bat pulled open the sling and gently extracted the kit from it, holding Thor's warm, wiggly body up to his cheek. The kit's nose twitched as he snuffed around. "Baby wants his milk," Lawrence said, and together they fed him. If Bat had his way, he would wear Thor in his sling all the time, but Mom made him take it off at bath time and bedtime. She was willing to compromise at dinner. "Really, Bat, don't you think Thor would be more comfortable in his enclosure?" Mom said, as she served the 3 platefuls of spaghetti and meatballs. "No," said Bat, "I really don't." Mom squinted her eyes tight when she opened them. She said, "Okay, Thor can join us for dinner, as long as he stays in the sling." "I'll bet when he's older, though, Thor will love spaghetti and meatballs," Bat said happily, twirling a messy fork full of noodles. "Skunks eat anything, you know. They're omnivores. Omni means everything. Vor means one who eats." "We know, Bat," said Janie. "You told us already, like 100 times." "Don't you think it's interesting?" asked Bat. "Don't you think what is interesting?" "Everything," said Bat. "Everything there is to know about animals." "Not really," said Janie. "I think theater is way more interesting than animals." "That's stupid," said Bat, because it was. "Bat," said Mom in her warning voice, deep and serious, with her eyebrows pointed toward her nose. "I'm sorry I said your interest is stupid," said Bat. He wasn't actually sorry because Janie's interest was stupid. Theater was pretend. Animals were real. But Mom had let him bring Thor to the dinner table, so Bat turned his mouth up in a smile and added, "Will you forgive me?" Mom liked it when he remembered to say that. "Whatever," Janie said. "Mom, did you make any garlic bread?" "Oh, it's in the oven. It's probably done," Mom said. Janie pushed back from the table, found an oven mitt in the drawer, and pulled the tray of bread out from the oven. It smelled wonderful. "Ezra once said that garlic is the best smell in the world, better even than roses," Janie said, putting the bread slices into the basket and bringing it to the table. "That Ezra is a character," Mom said. "He's pretty funny," Janie said. "He even makes our math teacher laugh, and she doesn't think anything is funny." "If she doesn't think anything is funny," Bat said, reaching across the table for a piece of bread, "then why does she laugh at Ezra? Is it mean laughing?" "No, Bat," said Janie. "She thinks Ezra's funny." "Then why did you say she doesn't think anything is funny?" "Never mind, Bat," said Janie. Bat took a bite of garlic bread. The crust was crusty, and then the inside was hot and squishy. Melted butter glazed his fingers, which he licked, one by one. They ate for a few minutes without talking. The only sounds, the crunch of biting into bread and the scraping noises of forks against plates as they wound bites of spaghetti. Then Jamie announced, "I've decided I'm going to audition for the Queen." "I thought you wanted to be Alice," Mom said. "That was before I read the script," Janie said. "Then I realized Alice is boring. She just wanders around whining about everything." "You'd be good at that part," Bat said. "You're good at whining." "Mom," whispered Janie, "make him stop." "Bat," said Mom, "that wasn't nice." "But I said she'd make a good Alice," Bat said. "It's not for a good reason," Mom explained. "Why does the reason matter? I gave her a compliment." "I don't think it felt like a compliment to Janie," Mom said. "Janie, did it feel like a compliment to you?" "No," said Janie. "It was an insult." "You see, Bat," said Mom, "it wasn't a compliment to Janie." Suddenly, Bat wished that he had been wearing his earmuffs and that he hadn't even heard Mom and Janie talking about the play. Sometimes it was just better if Bat kept his thoughts to himself. He ate a few more bites of his spaghetti and had almost finished all of his bread when he felt Thor wriggling around in his pouch. "May I be excused?" he asked. "Yes," said Janie. "Honey, you know it's up to you to model good behavior," Bat heard Mom say to Janie as he headed to the refrigerator to get out the puppy formula. "Sometimes, Mom, even I'm not a good enough actress to pretend not to notice when Bat is being weird." "Oh, Janie," said Mom. "Get out the formula," Bat told himself. "Put some in the syringe, warm it up, ignore Janie." Bat knew that sometimes Janie thought he was weird, but he still didn't like to hear her say it out loud. Actually, Janie could be weird too. like when she sang at the top of her lungs in the shower, even though there wasn't an audience, and how she cared if her hair was wavy or straight. Did Ezra ever think that Janie was weird? Maybe that's what makes Ezra her friend, Bat thought. He likes the parts of her that everyone else thinks are weird. Chapter 19. A blessing of sorts. 5 nights later, at bedtime, Janie noticed the nice thing that Bat had done to thank her for coming up with the perfect name for Thor. It had taken him 2 days to forgive Janie for being so mean during spaghetti night, and another day to come up with the idea. He'd been waiting ever since for Janie to notice, so when she called out from her bedroom, "Mom, have you seen the top part of my unicorn pajamas?" Bat felt excited. "I did all the laundry that was in the basket," Mom answered. "You washed the bottoms but not the top," Janie said. "Then you must not have put the tops in the laundry basket." "Why would I put the bottoms but not the top?" Janie asked. "Why would I wash just the bottoms if the top were in the basket too?" Mom asked back. Then it was time for Bat to reveal the nice thing. "I know where your unicorn pajama top is," he said. "You do?" Mom and Janie said together. "Yes," Bat said. "I took it out of the dirty laundry basket." "Why would you do that?" Mom asked. "Because if I waited until after you washed it, then Thor wouldn't recognize Janie's scent." Janie had been the one to name Thor. Even though Bat didn't like the idea of sharing Thor with anyone, Janie had earned the right for Thor to know who she was. "Did you give that rodent my pajama top?" Janie's voice climbed higher and higher. "Actually," Bat said, "skunks aren't rodents. They're Methodidae. People used to think that they belonged to the same family as weasels, ferrets, and badgers, but this scientist named Dr. Jerry Dragoo figured out that—" "It doesn't matter, Bat," Janie said, interrupting him. "Go get my pajama top right now." "But it does matter," said Bat. Janie was not interested in hearing the difference between Methodidae and Muscletidae. She refused to listen to anything until after Bat had gone to Thor's enclosure and retrieved the unicorn pajama top from the pile where Thor slept. And when he tried to hand it to her, she wouldn't even take it. "It smells like animal," she said. "It smelled like animal before too," Bat said, "because I took it from the dirty laundry basket and it smelled like you." She didn't scream exactly. Bat didn't know what to call the sound that she made just before she spun around, stomped back into her room, and slammed the door. Bat felt tears gathering, ready to spill. Mom came over and hugged him tight. She didn't say anything, but she rocked him back and forth in the way he liked, and after a moment, Bat felt the sting of the tears begin to fade. "It was a nice gesture," Mom murmured into his hair. Bat liked the hot warmth of her breath. "Baby skunks are easier than sisters," Bat said. "That may be true," Mom answered, "but there are lots of baby skunks in the world, and you only have one sister." Gently, she took Janie's pajama top from Bat's hand. He hadn't realized that he was still clutching it. "Come on," she said. "I'll teach you how to do laundry." "Okay," said Bat, "but first I need to check one thing." He stuck his head into Thor's enclosure to make sure the kit was settled back in after having his nest disturbed. Thor was sleeping soundly, making a noise like a tiny little snore. Bat pulled one of his own t-shirts over Thor's body, tucking him in. Then he latched the enclosure and followed Mom to the laundry room. "Maybe if we use extra fabric softener," he said, "and make the pajama top softer than it's ever been, then maybe Janie won't be so mad." "I think that is a very good idea," Mom said, "and you can pour it in." Chapter 20. Problems. "Earth to Bat," Mr. Grayson said. Bat looked up. He had been staring at his math work in front of him, but he hadn't been doing the problems. Usually Bat liked math problems because he was good at them, and they made sense. Usually Bat asked for extra math problems when he was done with his regular math problems. But today, Bat didn't feel like doing the regular math problems, even though they were easy. Today, all Bat could do was think about was the time was passing very quickly, and that he still hadn't heard back from Dr. Jerry Dragoo, world skunk expert. "You look like you're having a hard time focusing today, Bat," said Mr. Grayson. "I'm not having a hard time focusing," said Bat. "Let me rephrase that. You look like you're having a hard time focusing on your schoolwork today, Bat." "Yes," said Bat, "I am focusing on something else." "He can't think of anything other than that stupid baby skunk," Thor isn't stupid, Bat said. He felt his throat grow tight with anger. Once my dog got sprayed by a skunk when we were camping, Israel said. He was stinky for a week. Okay, said Mr. Grayson. This is all very interesting, but right now is math time, not skunk time. There should be skunk time at school, thought Bat. He picked up his pencil and forced his brain to focus on the math problems. Most of them were too easy to even bother working out on paper. But he showed all the steps because Mr. Grayson liked it when he showed his work, and Bat liked Mr. Grayson. While part of Bat's brain worked with his hand to do the math work, he let the other part of his brain think about skunk time. If there were a skunk time at school, like math time or language arts time or yoga time, then maybe Bat could bring Thor with him. Maybe skunk time would be when everyone in class did research about skunks and wrote reports about skunks and built skunk dioramas. Over the last week, Bat had spent as much time as he could with Thor, but every day he had to leave him when he was time for school. The kit's fur was growing in all over, fuzzy, wild black hair with a bright white stripe down the center, from the tip of its nose to the tip of its tail. He was still small enough to fit curled into a little ball in Bat's 2 hands. And he'd had plenty of time to spend with Thor, because Janie had barely spoken to him since the pajama top incident. She spent all her time in her room practicing the Off With Her Head song for the Queen audition and going over to Ezra's house. Now and every other Friday was coming, and Bat would have to go with Janie to Dad's house. Even worse, no matter how much Bat begged and pleaded and bounced up and down, no matter how clearly he explained to Mom why she should change her mind, Thor would not be going to Dad's house with Bat and Janie. This every other Friday meant that Thor had already spent 2 weeks living with Bat and his family, and if Bat didn't find a way to change Mom's mind in 2 more weeks, Thor would be leaving for a rescue center. Thor will be fine, Bat, Mom said. Lawrence is going to take him for the weekend. It wasn't that Lawrence couldn't do a good job of taking care of animals, Bat thought as he finished his last row of math problems. It wasn't that Bat didn't trust Lawrence. It was just that, well, Bat didn't want anyone else taking care of the skunk kit. What if Lawrence did a better job? What if Thor was happier at Lawrence's house than at their house? And even if Lawrence was trustworthy, no one was perfect. What if Lawrence put the animal carrier on top of his car while he was unlocking the door and then he forgot it was up there and he drove away? What if Lawrence went out to get some ice cream and didn't remember to lock the door to his house and someone broke in and stole Thor? Even if everything went just right, at the end of the weekend, they would be 2 days closer to Thor leaving them forever. Just thinking about that made Bat feel queasy, like he'd been jumping on a trampoline with his stomach full of pizza. Bat, said Mr. Grayson, do you need to take a little break? Bat stopped tapping his heels under the table. He pulled the neck of his t-shirt, which he'd been sucking on in the way that he sometimes did when he felt nervous, out of his mouth. He set his pencil down. Yes, please. At the back of the room, Baby Cake sat placidly licking a light pink wheel of salt. Her ears flopped to the sides in relaxation. Bat wished he felt as calm as Baby Cake's looked. He climbed into her enclosure and sat cross-legged beside her, scratching behind her ears and thinking about the weekend. If his parents weren't divorced, then he wouldn't have to leave home every other weekend to go to his dad's dumb apartment. If his parents weren't divorced, Thor wouldn't be spending the weekend with Lawrence. Chapter 21. Organizational Systems. At least Dad liked to go to the candy store as much as Bat did. That was one good thing about every other weekends. On Saturday morning, after breakfast and dishes, Dad pulled their bicycles out of his garage. Unlike the garage at home, which was twice as big and 4 times as crowded, Dad's garage was labeled and organized. Helmets were kept in a clear plastic bin marked helmets, and bikes, instead of leaning up against the wall or on each other, were pulled neatly into a bike rack like the one at school. And Dad always arranged them in order of size, left to right, large, medium, small. A metal rack in one corner held car supplies, spare containers of oil, a big jug of windshield wiper fluid, a little vacuum that sat ready on its charger. There was a tool bench too, an assortment of wrenches swung from hooks across the front. Coffee cans held screws and nails. Sometimes Dad let Bat nail things into pieces of scrap wood, as long as he wore safety goggles. Bat approved of Dad's garage. It was just under a 1-mile ride to the Sugar Shack, Bat's favorite candy store. To get there, Bat and Janie and Dad rode out of their dad's apartment complex down a bike path towards central Quincy. They crossed the river on a bridge made for just bicycles and pedestrians before turning onto 3rd Street. While Bat was double-checking the lock of his bike outside the Sugar Shack, he heard someone say his name. It was Israel from school. It took Bat a second to figure out who it was, because Bat hadn't ever seen Israel anywhere but in school, and never on the weekends. "What are you doing here?" Israel asked. He was smiling in the way that showed almost all of his teeth. He had, Bat noticed, a piece of something green, maybe cucumber, stuck in between his 2 front teeth. "We're going to buy some candy," Bat said. "Cool," Israel said. Then he said, "We just had brunch next door." He pointed to the Broken Yoke Cafe. A man and woman were pushing through the door just then, and they waved. Israel waved back. "That's what I would have guessed," Bat said. "You have food in your teeth." Israel's smile fell away. "Okay," said Bat. "See you Monday at school." "Hey," Israel said. "Wait." Bat waited. "I was wondering about the skunk. Do you still have him?" "Of course I do," said Bat. Then, "Well, not right now, because I had to spend the weekend with my dad." "Okay," said Israel. "I didn't know your parents were divorced." Bat didn't say anything to that because it wasn't a question. Still, Israel stood there on the sidewalk like he was waiting for Bat to say something. The grown-ups who had been waving to Israel walked over and stood behind him. And now it felt like all 3 of them were waiting for Bat to say something or do something. "Well, goodbye," Bat said, and he walked away. "Hey, Sport, is that your friend from school?" Dad's face looked just as excited as it looked when he was watching baseball. "Bat doesn't have friends," Janie said, but not in a mean voice, just matter-of-fact voice. "I'm sure that's not true," Dad said. "It's not true," Bat answered. "Lawrence is my friend, and Mr. Grayson." "Oh, Bat, grown-ups don't count," Janie said. Then she pulled open the door to the candy store and held it for Bat to pass inside. The Sugar Shack was an exceptional candy store. It had bins full of M&Ms separated into colors, so if you wanted exactly 11 greens and 11 blues, but no yellows, reds, or oranges, as Bat did, he could get exactly that. Along the back wall were all the gummies: gummy bears, gummy worms, gummy sharks, gummy hippos, gummy rhinos, gummy jellyfish, gummy dinosaurs, gummy frogs, gummy sea stars, gummy zebras, gummy camels, gummy parrots, gummy crabs. Bat didn't like gummy candy, but he always got 1 gummy sea star anyway. He liked the way they felt in his hand. Big barrels full of hard candies formed the aisles. Jawbreakers and gumballs and candy necklaces and rock candy and ring pops. Just inside the door was a case of jelly beans arranged in a rainbow of colors. Near the counter stood a candy bar display with all ordinary stuff, but harder to find candy bars too, like Violet Crumble Bar and Zagnut bars. "You sure inherited my sweet tooth," Dad said, loading up his own plastic bag with jelly beans. "Actually," Bat said, "teeth have nothing to do with it. People taste with their tongues and their noses." "Do you stick that gummy bear up your nose to taste it?" Janie asked. Her bag was full of a mismatch of candies that didn't make any sense to Bat. "It's a gummy sea star," Bat said, "and no, the way something smells is part of how you taste it." "Well, I guess that's why people don't eat skunk meat," Janie said. "P.U." She wrinkled up her nose and stuck out her tongue. "Thor doesn't stink," Bat said. "He doesn't even spray yet." "But he will," Janie said. "I hope not until after we give him up for rescue. Maybe we'll keep him," Bat whispered. "Sport, your mom can't adopt every stray animal that comes into the clinic," Dad said. "She'd have a zoo if she did." "We won't adopt all of them," Bat said. "Just this one." "Mom said we're only going to keep him for a couple weeks," Janie told Dad. "But Bat is getting too attached." Bat started bouncing on the balls of his feet. He clutched his plastic bag in his fist. It crinkled in a way that bothered his ears, so he loosened his fingers and let it go. Blue and green M&Ms bounced and rolled across the floor of the Sugar Shack. "Sport, you've got to be more careful," Dad said, his eyebrows pointing at his nose. Bat felt tears welling up in his eyes. He swiped at his face with the arm of his shirt and turned toward the door. Under the sole of his shoe, he felt the crunch squish of a flattened M&M. Chapter 22. baseball and braiding. Before bed on Sunday night, Janie always took a shower and washed her hair. Lately, she'd been weaving it into 6 braids while it was still damp, so she could have wavy hair in the morning. Janie's hair was usually stick straight like Dad's and Bat's, though hers was a dark, dark brown instead of black. When she came out of the bathroom in her pajamas carrying a wide-toothed comb and 6 hair ties, Bat asked, "Can I braid it?" "I can do it myself," Janie said. "Let me try." "Let him try," Dad said from the couch, where he sat watching baseball on the TV. He had an orange and black baseball cap on his head because tonight he was rooting for the Orioles. He had a collection of caps for all the teams he liked, and whenever one of his teams was playing, he'd select the right baseball cap for the top shelf of his closet and wear it for the whole game. Dad said he didn't believe in luck, but it sort of seemed like he did. "Okay," said Janie, "but if you mess up the braids, I'm going to redo them." She sat cross-legged on the floor facing the TV. Bat sat behind her on the couch next to Dad. Janie handed him the comb. Bat started combing at the bottom, the way Janie had taught him, so he wouldn't pull her hair. He worked out all the little tangles with the teeth of the comb as he made his way up toward the top of her head. Soon he could pull the comb straight through her hair from very top to the ends, without snagging at all. Then he divided her hair into 6 sections, 2 in front, 2 in the middle, and 2 in back. The back 2 sections looked a little thicker than the others, but Bat didn't think Janie would notice. He picked up the front left section of hair and started braiding. "Go! Go! Go!" Dad yelled at the TV. One of the baseball players had made a good hit, and he was running as fast as he could around the bases. "I think baseball is the most boring game you watch," Janie said, "even more boring than football." "That's because you won't let me explain it to you," Dad said, adjusting his cap. "If you understand the game, it's fascinating." Bat reached the bottom of the first section of hair and wound a pink elastic band around the end. The braid wasn't perfectly neat and straight like the braids Janie did, but it wasn't bad. Moving on to the other front section, Bat focused on making the second braid even better than the first. "Make sure you're braiding it tight," Janie said, "so it's really wavy." "I am," Bat said. Bat loved braiding Janie's hair, even though he usually wasn't very good at hand things. He liked the feeling of the damp, heavy hair. He liked organizing it into a series of smaller, neatly contained braids. He liked feeling close to Janie like this, by helping her and touching her without having to have a big conversation that might turn into a fight. Getting along with people was hard for Bat. Figuring out what they meant when they said something or when they made certain faces at him, people were complicated, but braiding was easy. There. He'd finished the second braid and wrapped the end of this one in a dark green elastic. Janie reached up and touched the braid, then pulled it in front of her face so she could see it. "Not bad," she said. "Yes!" yelled Dad. He stood up in front of the couch, grabbing the cap from his head and waving it around. It wasn't the same as being at home. Mom wasn't here. Thor wasn't here. But maybe every other weekends could be okay. Chapter 23. Windows. Some days, Bat was the first person awake. It didn't happen often because Mom was a morning person. Usually when Bat woke up, he went straight into the kitchen to find Mom sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and a book. But every now and then, Bat awoke to a completely quiet house. A sleeping house. Tuesday was one of those mornings. Bat woke up, suddenly and completely, to a still dark sky outside his window. He blinked and sat up, slipping his feet into his slippers, took the skunk sling from the doorknob where he'd hung it the night before, and went into the living room. The living room windows faced the front yard. Bat could make out the shape of the big oak tree in the lawn. It was a darker shadow against the velvety early morning sky. He went straight to Thor's enclosure and found the kit tucked into his sleeping corner, surrounded by the rice-filled socks that made a nice padded nook. He stroked Thor's back, feeling the rise and fall of his sleeping breaths, before gently scooping him up. Thor let out a little high-pitched yawning sound, his tiny paws swimming through the air as Bat settled him into his sling. Once inside, Thor rustled around for a moment before quieting back down. In the kitchen, Bat opened the refrigerator as quietly as he could and retrieved the formula. He filled the syringe and held it under a stream of hot water to warm it up. Thor could smell the formula. Bat could tell because he wriggled around in his pouch. "It's coming, little guy," Bat said. When the formula was warm, he went back into the living room and curled up on the window bench. Already the sky was changing. It was still dark, but now Bat could make out the branches of the tree. He heard the very earliest morning birds, the ones that sang each day as the sky began to lighten. Gently, Bat reached into the pouch and pulled out the skunk kit. It was too dark to see clearly, but Bat didn't want to startle him by turning on the lamp, so he brought the syringe down to Thor's face and let the skunk find the tip by smell. As Thor had his breakfast, the sky turned violet and pink, then orangey red. The tree's trunk lightened from black to brown, and its leaves transformed to green. The first birds called louder, waking up their friends, and they became a chorus of song. Bat looked down to see if Thor had finished his formula and gasped in surprise. The two tight slits that had been closed since Mom first brought him home were open. Bat could see Thor's eyes. They were the darkest black Bat had ever seen. "Hey there," Bat cooed down at Thor. "Good morning, little kit." Thor kept licking at the tip of the syringe, but his quick pink tongue hesitated just a bit when Bat spoke. Maybe he was listening. Maybe he understood. Bat stroked back the soft black and white fuzz on Thor's little forehead. "I see you," he said. "Do you see me?" Mom emerged from her bedroom, tying the belt of her robe. "Bat, you're up early," she said. "Mom," Bat said, "look, Thor's eyes are open." Mom came over to see. "Look at that," she said, resting her hand on the top of Bat's head and petting his hair just as Bat stroked Thor. "His eyes are beautiful, Mom," Bat said. "Don't you think his eyes are beautiful?" Mom sat down on the window seat next to Bat. "I think that's the first time I've ever heard you mention someone's eyes," she said. "Most eyes are boring," Bat said, "but Thor's eyes are amazing. Look, they are the color of outer space. They're open." "Bat," Mom said, "what color are my eyes?" "Brown," Bat answered, still staring at the skunk kit. Droplets of formula hung from the little black and white hairs all around his mouth. "Nope," said Mom, "they're hazel." This got Bat's attention. "Really?" He looked up and stared at Mom's face. Her eyes were golden brown, with little flecks of green and yellow in them. "They look like marbles," Bat said. "I never noticed." "Well, you never have been all that interested in people's eyes." Bat shrugged. "I never thought about it," he said. "Some people say you can tell a lot about a person by looking into their eyes," Mom said. "What do you think about that?" Bat thought about it. "I don't get it," he said. "If I want to know something about a person, I ask. I think you can tell more about people from what they say than from their eyes." Said Mom. "You have an interesting way of seeing the world, Bat." Bat stared deep into Thor's space-black eyes. He tried to see if he could learn from them. He looked first into the left eye, then into the right, and then into the left again. "It's hard to look into two eyes at the same time," he said. "Which one am I supposed to look in?" "I don't think it matters. Try looking into my eyes," Mom said, "and see what you can learn about me." Bat tucked Thor back into the pouch. Mom took the syringe and set it down. She took Bat's hands into hers and smiled at him. Bat smiled back, and then he tried to see what Mom's eyes could tell him. The left eye had 3 more flecks of green than the right eye. The right eye had 1 more fleck of yellow. The black points in the middle were exactly the same size. Her eyes were shiny. "Hazel is cool," Bat said. "It's like a rainbow of all the boring colors." "Funny, Bat," Mom said. "Do you know what I see when I look into your eyes?" "Brown and black," Bat said, "with white all around." "Yes," said Mom. "I do see that, but I also see your sweetness, and your thoughtful nature, and your busy, busy mind." Bat looked away. It was uncomfortable to let anyone look into his eyes for too long. It made him feel kind of itchy and shy. "You can tell all that by looking into my eyes?" "Yes," she said. She leaned forward and kissed Bat's forehead. "I see all that and more."